Happy New Year, everyone. Apollo PS2 here to talk with you all about what I hope 2022 looks like for Planetside 2. Originally, this video was going to be a top 10 of what I hope to see come to the game in the next year, but that got far too long, so I've split it up into 3 parts. The first one being this video where I address things I think the game urgently needs. In the next portion, I'll talk about changes that have a larger and more long-term effect on the game. And in the third, I want to discuss things that are also large, but could specifically help to market the game better, which it hasn't done a good job of doing since its creation in 2012. These are my own personal opinions, but it is important to know that I am taking the viewpoint as half a player of the game and half the owner of the business that is Planetside. This is because I've played Planetside for a long time and want to see it grow as much as I want it to still be fun. Feel free to skip around using the chapters below and share any thoughts you have on my ideas in the comment section below. If you enjoy the video, be sure to like the video. If you loved it, subscribe and turn on notifications as well. Now, jumping in, I want to discuss what I see as immediate needs for the game. These items have varying levels of urgency, but are all important to maintaining population levels in the short term. First up is to continue fixing bugs and adding small quality of life improvements into the game. There was a focus on these two things this past year in addition to lots of new content, and that focus on fixing and improving existing systems was very well received and led to more subscriptions. In my opinion, it's really important that this continues to be the case. The game is old and bugs are inevitable, and players themselves make the game frustrating enough for one another in this sandbox, so removing small pain points wherever possible should always be a focus, whether through design choices or bug fixing. Some low-hanging fruit I see includes being able to accept multiple or all missions for a day with a single clicker hotkey, toggling off mission progress HUD elements completely, a simple in-game crosshair setting, preventing scope jittering when on literally any angled surface, and fixing of the new leaning bug. Next is to surprisingly have fewer content updates, or at least better thought out ones. This actually relates to what we just talked about, since new content creates new bugs. While the past year was great for bug fixes, we had tons of new content creating new bugs. As a result, it can certainly feel like there's no net progress being made toward turning Planetside 2 back into a modern title. Not to mention, new content also creates balance nightmares that consistently see folks leave the game either for months or permanently. There's understandably business pressure to introduce new guns and abilities that are unique and fun to play with, but the expense of doing so without thorough thought given to balance and how it affects the player base at large is big, and something that I've personally seen hurt the community far too often over the years. Weapons such as the Striker, Knisse, and Heavy Crossbow, implants such as Beserker and Minor Cloak, and abilities such as Zoe don't bring new players in. They just allow a subset of players to enjoy it for a time and for the game to make a quick buck while the rest begin to leave the game, many not bothering to check back in after the item is nerfed into oblivion. To grow more organically, it's important to focus on gameplay experience holistically, not just through the lens of what new tools will be offered to players after an update that they can purchase, but also what map formations and win conditions can lead to something truly unique that keeps players wanting more, not less. My third immediate wishlist item for Planetside 2 is dealing with anything I describe as a quote, deal breaker. These are things that immediately make any player not want to play Planetside 2, no matter what. There are no counters for these things, which make them deadly. As of right now, this includes hackers, the actual ones, and poor server performance. Especially recently, we've had an entire season where Planetside 2 has regularly been ruined during high population hours by less than 5 hackers. At first, it was cute, but we are at a point where the game population is decreasing with these people being allowed to wreak havoc on servers. This one is relatively simple, and it's the need to instantly kick and temp ban individuals who meet a certain stat threshold over a period of time. This used to be part of the game, but the best of the best would wrongfully trigger these kick events. We need limits that surround headshot percent from certain ranges with non-bolt-in action rifles, or extreme KPM thresholds, think 10 plus over 30 minutes or more. Battle.eye tries to get rid of hackers for good, and it isn't working. The next step should be making their process more arduous and annoying than anything else, and have them spend more time creating new accounts rather than flying around the map. As far as server performance is concerned, we are going on a year of quite frankly insulting server performance. Never mind years of poor performance. I am past two hands counting the number of friends I know who have left the game simply because of poor server performance. It isn't even difficult to see how performance tanks after every server maintenance. It feels like the hardware our servers are running on is getting worse, not better. I don't know who needs to talk with who, but how much you spend on your servers is directly related to the subscriptions to your game, I promise you. When you skimp out on your servers, your customers skimp out on you, period. This last point sort of intersects with the game's marketing in the third video in this series, but it is still most immediate, and that is obviously Oshur, the new content coming to Planetside 2. This content needs to be polished for it to be marketable. So far from what I can discern, the dev team is doing a good job at making this content look more modern than others, which is desperately needed. I do think this is the most pressure the sound and art divisions of Rogue Planet games have or should have on them, since it's important that the colors pop and look truly tropical in nature. If I was in charge, I'd likely slap Planetside Arena's art on there and tweak from there, since that game did a great job at bringing the environment more to life and into the modern day FPS art style. Just as important though is that the gameplay is unique, which I believe they are focusing on as well. A new map is great, sure, but it doesn't really mean much of anything unless we interact with it differently. The devs tried this with Esmir and it fell flat, but that's because they used it as a way to hand-fist a campaign system into the game to monetize some content. A terrible idea, but likely necessary to satisfy the suits for that year. With Oshur, they need to almost gamify the continent to provide new and shiny gameplay elements that scale well with population throughout the times of day. Look to the recently added containment sites on Esmir to see how not to do this. I think the underwater mechanics, especially how vehicles might end up interacting with one another, is a great example of doing this. Certain new bases, not all of which need to be grand projects, alongside construction changes, should help greatly as well. My hope is that Oshur creates new and interesting moments for players that scream only in Planetside, as those are the ones that keep us coming back for more. If that means more delays in actual testing, then so be it. So there you have it, my wishlist items for immediate changes to Planetside 2 in 2022. Let me know what you think in the comments below. I respond to each one. Am I crazy for wanting fewer new weapons and abilities in 2022? I kind of think I might be. Also, be sure to check out my later videos discussing larger meta changes, as well as ones that can help the marketing of the game that I also want to see in the next year. They'll be linked in the description below as they come out. If you're a newer player, check out my new How Not to Die in Planetside 2 videos coming out alongside these ones, as well as my top 10 ways to make certs and top 10 weapons in Planetside. As always, I stream on Twitch Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Sundays, 9 p.m. Eastern, and love to chat about these topics there as well, so feel free to pop on in.